welcome to People in Power. I'm Juliana Rufus. On today's program, Ciber Cuba.
For decades, many of us Cubans only read the national press and only had access to state television. And this made us believe in a world that was somehow unreal, where everything in Cuba was good and everything abroad was catastrophic.
Whilst many people outside Cuba have romanticized Fidel Castro's vision of revolutionary life, many Cubans have complained about a lack of freedom on the island. They point to the fact that both access to information and freedom of expression are restricted. But increasingly that is changing, and many of the changes are due to the unstoppable power of the internet. Fernando Lucena meets a generation determined to introduce Cuba to the new age of digital revolution.
Cuba, a socialist society in a country where time seems to have stood still. Internet access and mobile phones, services that Westerns take for granted, are still a luxury among Cubans. But there are some signals that indicate this might finally be changing.
My blog, which is called Generation Y, began in April last year. I felt this urge to express a lot of things that had accumulated inside me and that I didn't see reflected in the national press and television. In a way, my blog was a kind of exorcism, to get out of my system all these stories and bits of frustration and to tell what happens in my daily life.
A strict control on the media has characterized Cuba since the communist revolutionaries took power in 1959. Journalists have to operate within the confines of laws against anti-government propaganda and against the insulting of officials. This can carry penalties of up to 3 years in prison.
For decades, many of us Cubans only read the national press and only had access to state television. And this made us believe in a world that was somehow unreal, where everything in Cuba was good and everything abroad was catastrophic: war, death and hunger. In a way, technology has changed the understanding we had of the world. Despite the slow internet speed we have in the island, some people that can access it copy the news, music videos and TV programs in memory sticks, and then copy these into CDs, which they distribute amongst their friends or even sell on the black market.
Joanny's blog touches day-to-day issues in the life of an average Cuban. Previous postings range from the shortage of lemons to the hoped-for wide-ranging reforms of newly appointed President Raúl Castro.
I write my texts offline and copy them onto a memory stick. Then I go out and try connecting to the web from an internet cafe. In Havana, there are only 2 internet cafes for public access. And you also have the hotels where, until only 2 months ago, Cubans were not allowed.
The average salary for a Cuban is $20 per month. Internet rates in tourist hotels vary between $7 and $14 per hour. However, Joanny was able to raise some money and get her thoughts onto the web.
That's the way it used to work until the last week of May, when the internet site where I have my blog was blocked. It isn't blocked from the whole of Cuba, but at least for me it's impossible to access it. So the blog is now updated thanks to a network of collaborators. I send my texts by email to different friends and readers who then post them on the blog.
At one of the very few internet cafes in Havana, located in a 5-star hotel, I asked a tourist to try accessing Joanny's website. Joanny is married to Cuban journalist Reinaldo Escobar.
Yo tenía 20 años cuando se me ocurrió la idea de estudiar periodismo en la Universidad de La Habana, ¿no?
I was 20 years old when I decided to study journalism at Havana University, and at that time, I naively believed it was possible to practice the kind of journalism that I thought was necessary for Cuba. After completing my degree, I had a few temporary jobs until I ended up at a magazine called Cuba International. It was one of those magazines that are printed in socialist countries, with the aim of projecting to the rest of the world a perfect image of Cuba. So I worked there for 14 years, carrying out propaganda work, right? Until one day I got bored with that job.
Reinaldo then decided to join Juventud Rebelde, which together with Granma were the only daily newspapers in Cuba, both of them controlled by the government.
Then the newspaper editor asked me to write an article on the 30th anniversary of the revolution. It was 1988. I thought of writing an article called 30 Years Later. What are the young people complaining about? That article, which until now I still consider to be an ode to the revolution, was taken